In the year of 2026, one of the most important metrics to watch or track might be one that almost no one is talking about. But I'm going to throw out a couple of numbers and then we'll dig in here just a little bit. Concept overview is the key in my view and my mind, and we're going to talk about that. But basically, what I'm thinking is this: 1.4 million compared to about 400,000. And I'll break this down a little bit further here as we go. But first off, the first thing I've got queued up is this through about the first 10 months of the year in China. You've got the PV, the passenger vehicle brands, and their sales and their rankings. Now, on screen, if you'll note, the blue represents ICE or gas sales. And the three companies I want to point out and really talk about their market dominance and what we're going to see change in the future, and why my reference to the 1.4 million is important is Audi, BMW, and Mercedes. These are the three brands that the NIO brand is targeting to take market share from in the future. And they're slowly starting to do so on the BEV side of things. But if you'll note that year to date, in this year of 2025, the three of those companies have already done over 500,000, almost 500,000, and over 400,000. That represents about 1.4 million in sales that are not EV sales in the Chinese market. So very, very large number. And if we come over and look at the breakdown across the price range, this is again where I want to kind of focus and hone in on, especially as we look at the year of 2026, which will be, I think, a pivotal year and maybe a big turning point with respect to the high end price point in that sort of sub-segmented BEV, 300,000 RMB price range and above. That price point, I think, is going to be important. And so if we look here at the PV, the passenger vehicle brands, and the bottom three different breakdowns here offer the price ranges from 300 to 400,000 RMB, 4 to 500,000, and 500,000 RMB and above. Now, if you'll note, BMW, Mercedes, Audi, all in the top 5, Mercedes, Audi, BMW in the top 3, and BMW, Mercedes, and Audi all in the top 10 of all three of these respective price ranges. But then if we come over here and look at the year to date, just the BEV numbers and that side of things, then you don't see any of them showing up in the top 20 for sales. And at the same time, you see companies like NIO and NIO's sub-brand Onvo both appearing, even though NIO is still working on their cadence with the refresh and the release of new models. And so this to me is, a signal, an indicator that as we now come over and look at the BEV brands and the price rankings with just the BEVs, and we see the significant drop off of those companies. BMW is in the top 5 for the 3 to 400,000 RMB price range. And then you've got Mercedes in the top, 10, we'll say, about number 6, I think, maybe number 7. Audi barely ranking. Audi also, not doing a ton of sales, especially if you look at the respective numbers of NIO in those categories in the 3 to 400 and 4 to 500,000 RMB price ranges. And then, of course, over here, NIO, especially with the ET9 coming out in the second position for the price range, and that's just been part of a year in this 2025. Also, if we come back to the 4 to 500,000 RMB price range point, and the price point for NIO, this is likely where the ES8, which is probably going to become NIO's best seller, will be seeing the rankings, and NIO move up the rankings, I guess, is the expectation. And so NIO, I think, still looks like the best positioned, especially if you consider that none of these other brands are offering any battery swappable vehicles. So the value proposition long-term from NIO that's offered seems not even close to being, comparable to what anyone else has out there at this point. But if you'll notice at the bottom of the screen, and I keep talking about it, is the big picture, the long-term view for me, the first 3 growth phases, and the first one being market awareness, brand awareness. NIO, as an example, it was last year. It was in one of the earnings calls from 2025, I should say. So it dated back to the year of 2024 when William Li was talking about how about half of the NIO sales were coming from one geographic area in China, meaning there's still a lot of market penetration for NIO to take across just that, enormous country, and most important, most critical, probably market for NIO in their home country of China. So as we watch this and head into the year of 2026, I think that the recognition that, and I'll come back to these numbers because what I did is I added up all of these BEV sales in this upper sort of the 300,000 RMB and above price range so that we could have this overview of concept as the key and what those numbers look like. It's under 400,000 total sales. And then if we come back and recognize that, the reality is the majority of the upper end price segment in China with Audi, BMW, and Mercedes still doing over 1.4 million sales, and the majority of those coming from gas or ICE sales. We still have a huge market share that can be taken from companies like those three by companies like NIO, and yes, even Onvo, and perhaps we'll see. My expectation is we will see some of the other brands, the Chinese brands, take some of that market share. But I guess for me, the main point is there is a huge piece of that market that still has not shifted over to full BEV adoption. And that means that NIO, with their positioning and with their brand recognition as perhaps the first globally known into the future, I think this will happen. I think NIO will be known for their premium products and services. And I don't know what the time frame is on that, but as we still have a long way to go with the highest end price point on the EV side of things, shifting away from gas, I just thought it was important to talk about that here heading into the end of the year in 2025. Also, this is just a snippet, a very brief overview of just the NIO breakdown, but again, kind of the nod to the ES8 being a big driver of the sales moving forward. This was a late refresh in the year, so again, not really reflected uh, in these numbers in this price range where it's likely to rank into the end of the year and then into 2026. But that's also I wanted to point it out because as we probably will see more adoption of the NIO brand and the ES8s. Just as an example, also vehicles, and perhaps this is one of the new ideas that NIO is adopting. It seems like we've seen this several times now, but they're doing these sort of specialized packages, and this I think is another way to get more sales as the brand is still becoming known even within that critical home market of China across the country. So I think this is important. I think perhaps things like this, the ET5 numbers, ET5 touring numbers are going to go up. And also, I do want to point this out since we're on topic here. One of the interesting things that's happened, excuse me, is NIO has come in with some sales and is ranked in this lower price point range with the NIO brand. But the reason for that is the optionality, which again is a nod to the value proposition to the consumer, where you don't have to buy the battery with the vehicle. And by opting out and doing battery as a service, your price point comes down on the upfront cost. And that's why some of these lower than 300,000 RMB price ranges are being hit by NIO vehicles. Again, I think a nod to NIO being really more user focused and friendly, and certainly from a value proposition standpoint, that is an advantage I believe they will hold years into the future. But it's still, I think, is early with respect to the market and brand awareness, even in their home country of China, which is why I want to point it out. Also, this is a recent share from William Li and one of his ET9 talks, and they actually talk about this subject, this topic of BEVs and the critical threshold in 2025. But again, back to my point, there's still over 1 million sales that BMW, Audi, and Mercedes have taken with gas sales in China. So there's a long way to go, and that means NIO still has a lot of time to take more of that market share. Now, I do want to offer this. People have been asking about it, and this is my thought as far as NIO with respect to profitability in the fourth quarter rather. I think the trick has always been, and I've talked in several of my videos, especially with the short-term stock price action and sort of the bear thesis is what I called it. If you look back over the last few years, and we'll just go back to so you can see why I was thinking this. We've got the 2021 earnings conference call where they covered the fourth quarter from 2021 and also the full year. And they didn't do it until March of the following year. And so there's a lag that NIO has with their earnings from when they actually have their numbers come in. Also, if we look at the next year, they did the same thing. It was a March release, the following year, a March release, and the following year, a March release. And so every one of these times in these recent years, what we've seen is NIO doesn't do their reporting for the fourth quarter until they do their full year reporting, and they usually don't do it in the same year. So they're likely going to be lagging on this into 2026. And that's one of the reasons that I had said that if we saw suppressed stock price action or not very exciting stock price action with the NIO stock heading into year end in 2025, this could be a factor, an indicator, because NIO's not likely to talk about, even if they do have the quarter four come in with profitability, they're not likely to talk about it or share and do that full earnings until probably March, just because that's what they've done in the past. Now, maybe they'll surprise us. I would love it if they would come out a little earlier, but I understand if they don't. And I frankly, as a long-term viewed investor, I'd rather see them continue to do what they're doing, which is focusing on the business, improving it, cutting down costs, and also the key with respect to the likelihood of quarter four profitability might be the ES8, the price point on that being higher, the vehicle margins being better, and the overall spend being lessened or the expenses being reduced by the company. I think those things do make it possible that even with, maybe lower numbers than what a lot of folks were expecting or hoping for within the quarter, I still think it's possible. But either way, I'm not going to worry too much about it because 2026, I think, is going to be a really important year for the company. And therefore, that's going to be one I'll be looking ahead to. Also, with respect to the quarter four earnings, since we're not likely to hear anything until the year of 2026, I'm just not going to worry too much about it. I'm just going to track the data, keep sharing things as I have been on the channel. And let me get this video finished up. And my plan is to, I'm doing it over the weekend, but my plan is to release it on Sunday, December 14th. So whenever you see this, have a great day or night. God bless you and your loved ones. I'll see y'all again very soon.